The first time I realized something was truly wrong, I didn't hear a knock or a warning or even a polite "sir" from the edge of my fence. I heard an engine, and then the scream of metal teeth chewing into my pasture like it was public land. When I stepped out onto my porch, coffee still hot in my hand, there was a bulldozer carving a bright, ugly scar straight through the grass where my black Angus usually grazed, and a woman in a crisp blazer was filming me like I was the criminal. She smiled into her phone and said loud enough for me to hear, "This is what happens when one person tries to hold back progress. My name is Jack Mercer, and that land isn't just a pasture. It's where my dad taught me how to read weather in the sky, where my granddad buried his first ranch dog, where my wife Emily used to sit on the fence rails with a glass of iced tea, laughing at how I talked to the cows like they were co-workers. Emily's gone now. And after she died, I learned something ugly about grief. It makes you quieter. And people like Brenda Hartwell can smell quiet from a mile away. Maple Ridge Estates popped up on the edge of my property like mushrooms after rain. Perfect lawns, identical mailboxes, folks who loved the idea of country living as long as it didn't come with mudflies or anything that made a sound after 9 p.m. And right in the middle of it all was the HOA, the Homeowners Association, which is basically a small government for people who think the world should be a spreadsheet. Brenda was their president. She looked like she was born holding a clipboard, and she talked in that syrupy tone that sounds nice until you realize it's just a knife with frosting on it. It started small like it always does. A letter taped to my gate noise concerns regarding livestock vocalizations during early morning hours. Another one a week later. Odor management reminder. Please be considerate of community standards. I remember staring at that second letter and actually laughing like a real laugh, the kind that surprised me because I hadn't done it in months. Be considerate. Lady cows don't read memos. Then Brenda showed up in person. She didn't come alone either. She had her husband Derek with her, leaning against a shiny Tesla like it was a throne, and she had her phone out recording before she even said hello. "Jack," she said, smiling. "Big, we're just trying to keep Maple Ridge family friendly." I looked past her at the car, then at Derek, then back at her. "My family's been here since before your community had a name," I said. "So what exactly do you want?" Brenda tilted her head like I was adorable and difficult. "We want cooperation," she said. "The Homeowners Association is building a recreational bike path. It'll be wonderful for property values and health." I blinked once. "A bike path," I repeated, "through my land." She didn't flinch. "Oh, we have an easement," she said, like that was the end of the conversation. "It's already approved." That word easement hit me like cold water, because I know my paperwork. I know every fence line, every survey marker, every crease in the deed my granddad kept in a tin box under his bed. "There is no easement," I told her. Brenda lifted a folder like a magic trick and waved a paper. "It's all here," she said, signed and recorded. And then she did something that still makes my stomach twist. She pointed her phone at my face and said, "For the record, Jack Mercer is refusing to comply with community improvements." I could feel the anger climbing up my throat hot and fast. But grief makes you cautious too. Like you're afraid if you yell too loud, the whole world will crack open again. So I tried to handle it like a grown man. I told her calm as I could, "Get off my property. Stop your crew. If you're claiming you have a right to do this, you can prove it in court." Brenda's smile tightened. "Oh, we don't need court," she said. "We have procedures." The next week was a slow-motion nightmare. Surveyors showed up hammering stakes into my grass. Bright paint marks appeared on my trees like someone tagging my home. And then on that morning with the bulldozer, Brenda stood outside my fence filming while the operator cut a strip wide enough for a paved trail. My cattle were bunched up uneasy, snorting and shifting like they could feel the disrespect in the air. Titan, my bull, stood still as stone watching. I walked down to the fence line and called out, "Shut it down. Now." The operator looked at Brenda. Brenda looked at me through her sunglasses and said, "Don't make this dramatic, Jack." "Dramatic," I snapped. "You're tearing up my pasture." She spread her hands, innocent as a preacher. "It's for the community," she said. "And honestly, if your animals can't handle a little foot traffic, maybe they don't belong here." That was the moment I realized she wasn't confused. She was confident, because she thought I wouldn't fight. And the thing is, for a minute she was right. Because after Emily died, there were mornings I barely had the energy to pull on boots. I'd stand in the kitchen staring at her favorite mug, thinking about how she used to say, "Jack, you're stubborn, but you're fair." And I'd wonder if being fair was just another way of being walked on. Brenda's letters started coming faster. certified mail, bold headings, words like non-compliance and liability. Then came the rumors. Somebody in Maple Ridge started whispering that my cattle were dangerous, that I was reckless, that my land was unsanitary. A flyer showed up on the community board claiming runoff from my ranch was contaminating water. And suddenly people who used to wave at me from the road looked away when I drove past. I'm not going to lie. It got to me. There was one night I sat alone at my kitchen table, lights off, just the glow from the microwave clock, and I actually thought, maybe I should sell. Maybe I should take whatever check they throw at me and disappear. Maybe I'm the stubborn old rancher stereotype and the world really is moving on without me. I remember saying it out loud to the empty room. Emily, am I fighting a losing battle? And the silence that came back was the kind that makes you feel small. The next morning I drove into town, not even sure why, and ended up outside the office of Lauren Pierce. Lauren's an agricultural attorney, the kind that wears boots with her suit and doesn't apologize for it. I slid Brenda's paperwork across her desk and said, "Tell me I'm not crazy." Lauren didn't even smile. She read the easement document, flipped it over, traced a line with her pen, and then looked up at me with a face like thunder. "Jack," she said, "this is either wildly incompetent or criminal." My heart thudded. "What do you mean?" She tapped the signature line. "This isn't your signature," she said, "and the recording details don't match the county format." I stared at it like it might change. Lauren leaned back and said, "They forged paperwork to justify trespassing. If they're willing to do that, they're willing to do more." I felt something shift in my chest, like a door that had been stuck finally creaked open. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being targeted. Lauren started pulling records, permits, contracts, contractor names. And the deeper she dug, the uglier it got. The HOA wasn't just building a cute bike path. They were redirecting funds, overbilling vendors, moving money in ways that didn't make sense unless somebody was skimming off the top. And Brenda? Brenda's name kept showing up in all the wrong places. Meanwhile, the harassment got meaner. One morning I found my water trough slick with something oily, the cattle refusing to drink. Another day, my truck had 2 tires punctured, and Brenda just happened to be standing at the edge of her neighborhood watching me struggle with the jack, like she'd scheduled it. When I confronted her, she put on that innocent voice again. "Oh no," she said, hand to her chest. "Are you implying the Homeowners Association would do something like that?" Then she smiled just barely and murmured, "Careful, Jack. Accusations can get you sued." I wanted to grab her clipboard and snap it in half. Instead, I did the hardest thing for a guy like me. I waited. Lauren told me, "We're not just going to win, we're going to end her." And to build that case, we needed proof, real proof, not just my word against hers. Frank Dalton helped more than he knows. Frank lives in Maple Ridge, but he's old-school Vietnam vet, no patience for bullies. He started talking to neighbors, collecting screenshots of Brenda's posts, saving copies of newsletters where she bragged about asserting authority. He even found someone on the board who'd gotten nervous and started quietly forwarding documents. Then Lauren called me one afternoon and said, "They're holding a big HOA meeting Friday night." My stomach tightened. Lauren's voice was calm, surgical. "Brenda is planning to present a final resolution for the bike path," she said. "She thinks she can force you into compliance. We're going to let her walk right into it." Friday night I walked into that meeting room with my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The place smelled like cheap coffee and expensive entitlement. Brenda stood at the front smiling like she owned the building. And in a way she thought she did. When she saw me, she said into the mic, "Oh good, Jack Mercer is here. Maybe tonight he'll finally understand that community comes first." There were murmurs. A couple people glared at me like I'd personally ruined their retirement plans. Brenda clicked a remote, and a projector lit up showing a map of my pasture with a bright line slicing through it. "Our recreational path," she announced. "Phase 1 is already underway." I felt my hands curl into fists. Brenda continued, "And since Mr. Mercer has been uncooperative, we will be pursuing enforcement actions, including fines, legal remedies, and if necessary, access measures." Then she looked straight at me and said, sweet as poison, "Last chance, Jack. Sign the agreement." And that's when Lauren stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't smile. She just said, "Brenda Hartwell, before we discuss enforcement, can you explain why your so-called easement contains a forged signature?" The room went still. Brenda blinked like she hadn't heard right. "I'm sorry," she said, laughing a little. Lauren held up the document. "This signature is not Jack Mercer's," she said, "and the county recording metadata is inconsistent. We've already verified with the clerk." Brenda's smile twitched. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "We filed everything legally." Lauren didn't flinch. "Then you won't mind explaining the HOA fund," she said, and she held up another packet. "The vendor overpayments, the transfers, the payments routed through shell services, leading back to accounts connected to you and Derek Hartwell." Derek shifted in his chair, face tightening. Brenda's cheeks flushed red. "You can't just accuse," she started. And then a man near the back stood up calm as a stone wall and said, "Actually, she can." He stepped forward, showed a badge, and the air in the room changed instantly. "Brenda Hartwell," he said, "you are being placed under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to misappropriate association funds." Brenda's mouth fell open. "No, no, this is harassment," she shrieked, turning, searching for sympathy like it was hidden under the chairs. People stared. Some looked horrified. Some looked like they'd just realized who'd been stealing from them. Brenda jerked back when the officer reached for her arm, and she screamed, "Derek, do something!" Derek stood halfway, then froze, because there were two more officers behind him. And that's when Brenda did the most Brenda thing possible. She bolted, not out the door, toward the parking lot, toward her precious Tesla, fumbling for her key fob like it was a magic wand. She slammed the button panic alarm so the car started blaring that high, shrieking horn that makes everyone's nerves jump. The sound echoed across the lot, and I felt it in my teeth. And out in the distance beyond the building I saw Titan's head lift above the fence line like a shadow rising. For a split second I thought, oh no, not now. Titan heard that alarm like a challenge. He charged, not because I told him to God no, because that land is his territory, and that noise was a threat, and bulls don't care about HOA meetings. People screamed and scattered. Brenda spun around just in time to see 800 pounds of muscle and fury barreling toward her car. She tried to scramble onto the hood heels, slipping arms flailing. And Titan didn't hit her. He hit the Tesla. He slammed into the side panel hard enough to dent metal like it was a soda can, horn scraping alarm, shrieking even louder, the whole luxury image collapsing into twisted, expensive panic. Brenda fell backward onto the pavement, screaming, mascara running, and the officers were on her in seconds, cuffing her while she kept yelling, "This is my community. You can't do this to me." I stood there, chest heaving, watching the woman who'd filmed me on my own porch, now filmed by everyone else as she got dragged away. She looked at me one last time, eyes wide and wild, and I didn't even have to raise my voice. "I just said that pasture was never yours, and tonight you finally learned what no means." And as the door closed behind her, still screaming, still blaming everyone but herself, I felt something I hadn't felt since Emily died. Not happiness, not celebration, just my spine straightening again. One short lesson stuck in my head as I walked back toward the dark. Never let bullies write the rules on your land, especially when they don't own it.